Hey, what's up? My name's Alea. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be talking about my top 10 most anticipated book releases of 2024. So I have 10 books to talk to you about today. We have a little bit of everything. We got some romance, we got some fantasy, we got some young adult, we got some horror, and I think they're all going to be really, really good. So the first book I want to talk to you about is called Somewhere in the Deep by Tanvi Berwa. So this is the same author who wrote Monsters Born and Made last year that I really, really enjoyed. And so this one is her new release, and it's a YA fantasy, and we're following this young girl named Crescent, and her parents have passed away, and they had a lot of debt that she has now inherited. And in order to be able to pay off that debt, she has been participating in these like underground fights in this like fighting ring. And one day one of the fights goes terribly wrong and she loses, and she is basically like destitute, and the only way that she can make ends meet is by accepting this deal. And she's basically offered this deal that if she goes on this mission as a bodyguard, they will repay her debts and her debts will be totally forgiven. And so she agrees to go on this really dangerous rescue mission into these underground mines that are underneath her island that she lives on, and there's a lot of like undersea monsters that live down there, and one of the people who's on this expedition is trying to kill her as well. And so she's trying to figure out who is trying to take her out, and she's trying to fight these monsters, and she's realizing that a lot of the creatures that live under the island are creatures that she thought were just legends, and it turns out they're real, and it's very dangerous, and I think it's going to be really, really good. It's a South Asian inspired YA fantasy, high action, ocean vibes. I think it's going to be really, really good. I really enjoyed this author's previous book, and so I'm really, really excited to get to this one because it's set in the same world. And then the next one I want to talk to you about is called The Wraith King by Juliet Cross. So this is a adult fantasy romance, and it's the first in her new series, and it's about Fae. And so there's this war going on between the Light Fae and the Wraith King, and the Wraith King realizes that there's this prophecy that says that the princess of the Light Fae is his fated mate, and that she is supposed to like help bring about the rise of the Dark Fae. And so he basically says, I'm not going to stop this war unless the princess surrenders herself to me and like comes and lives with me in my palace. And so she does, because she's tired of her people being killed. And when she gets to this palace, she realizes that this is the same place she was imprisoned as a child, and there's some sort of like mysterious trauma that happened to her there as a kid, and she's trying to like unpack the mystery of what happened in her past while she's there. And the Wraith King is realizing that maybe she means more to him than just being like a priceless weapon, and they kind of fall for each other, and it looks really, really fun. And then the next one I have is What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. So this is the sequel to What Moves the Dead, and I really, really enjoyed that one when I read it. And so this one follows the same main character, Alex Easton, and in this one, Alex is returning to their home country in Galatia, and they basically get back to their hometown, and they hear from the villagers that this terrifying, breath-stealing monster has taken up residence in their house. And so they go to check it out, and something is definitely wrong, and there's some really creepy shit going on in their family lodge, and they have to try and like fight this monster that's taken up residence in their house. And it sounds really interesting. I really liked Alex Easton from the previous novella, and I'm interested to see where T. Kingfisher is going with this novella series, because What Moves the Dead seemed kind of like a whole insular kind of story, but it seems like T. Kingfisher is kind of branching out with this main character and having them go on these other like horror adventures and stuff. So I'm interested to see what happens with that. And then the next one I have is called Lore of the Wilds. So this is a debut fantasy novel, and it's also about Fae. And so we're following this young woman who lives in this forest, and basically the Fae in this world like run the show. And so in her human village, she's kind of like trapped there. And the Fae realize that they need a human to go into this old enchanted library because it's been like cursed, and so the fae can't get into it, but they're thinking that maybe a human could get in. And so basically Lore ends up going to this library and like organizing and cataloging everything in the library, and it's magical, and it has like these cursed doors that she has to breach and stuff, and there's these two fae that she is kind of falling for. And so I think there's either like, I'm not sure if it's a love triangle or if it's like a white shoes situation, but it sounds interesting, and I've heard really good things about this from people who've gotten ARCs recently. And then next up I have The Baker and the Bard. So this is a debut graphic novel. It looks really, really cute. It's a cozy fantasy, and we're following two best friends who set out on a journey to find some ingredients for an unusual bakery order, and then they end up getting caught up in some ecological destruction that's happening in their fate realm. And I've heard that this is a really super sweet cozy fantasy for people who like cozy graphic novels like Garlic and the Vampire and that kind of thing. So I think this is going to be really super cute. And then the next one I have is We Ate the Dark by Mallory Pearson. So Mallory Pearson is one of my favorite bookstagrammers, and she has recently written a novel, and so this is her debut. And it's a horror novel about these four women who go into this haunted house, and only three of them come out alive. And then they end up going back to the house to try and figure out what happened to their friend. And I think there's also like a sapphic element to it, and there's some sort of like shadowy presence that's stalking them in this house, and it sounds spooky. I'm kind of trying to go into this one blind, and this is also one that I'm thinking about maybe having be a book club selection for my book club one of the months in 2024. And next up we have another romance, and this is a historical romance, and it's called The Duchess by Sophie Jordan. So this is the sequel to The Countess, which I read in 2023 and loved. And so I'm really excited about this because at the end of The Countess there was a little like excerpt of like the beginning of this book, The Duchess, and it was so good, and I was like, okay, I have to pre-order that. So I'm super stoked about this. And we're following this woman from book one, and her name is Valencia, and she was the wife of a duke, but her husband was ill and passed away, and he was super abusive to her, and so she was really happy that he died. And basically she's just kind of enjoying being a widow because now she doesn't have to deal with anybody's bullshit. But she says, I liked my husband well enough, but I liked him even better dead.
These white men are dangerous.
And it's been a year since her husband died, and she's kind of just doing her own thing. She's going to parties, doing whatever she wants. And then the new duke, who is like replacing her husband, arrives, and he moves into her house because he has the title now. And so he moves in with a bunch of his unwed sisters. Valencia is basically trying to like get in his good graces so that he will help like financially support her, even though they're not married. Just because of the whole title thing, she's still like allowed to live in the house. And they basically strike up this bargain that he will let her live there and like financially support her if she helps his 6 unwed sisters get married and like come out in the ton and make their debut in society. And so they're kind of having this, forced proximity moment because they're under the same roof. And she realizes that she is really into this new Duke guy named Rain, and she vowed that she would never risk getting married again, but she's really tempted by this sexy new man. And I am so excited for Valencia. She went through hell in book 1 with her shitty husband, and I just want to see her be happy, because the scene that I read with these two in like the little excerpt from the other book was so spicy, and I think they're gonna have incredible banter.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
And I am already down bad for this book, and it's not even published yet. And then the next one I'm excited for is called First Light by Liz Karen. So this is the sequel to Night's Edge, which was a vampire novel that I read in 2023 and really enjoyed. So this is the sequel, and I'm not going to say too much about the synopsis because it's kind of a spoiler for book 1, but we're following our main character Mia as she is hunting down this group of vampires, essentially, and they are like the group of vampires that turned her mom into a vampire. And so I think she is kind of like trying to hunt them down to get revenge on them because of how things played out between them and her mother. But I think she's gonna bite off a little bit more than she can chew, because she's a human and these vampires have, you know, super speed and strength and fangs and all that. So I'm interested to see what happens with this. I like the way that vampires are done in this story because it's set in like Arizona, it's hot in the desert, but you also have this element of like the vampires coming out at night, and there's like a curfew and stuff, and people have to be really careful, and there's all of these like tests that they have in society to try and like make sure that vampires aren't allowed into areas where humans are and stuff. Vampires are very like shunned, and if the government catches you, they will kill you if you're a vampire and stuff like that. So it's very interesting, like the politics of it all, but I am kind of going into this one blind just because I am interested to see where the series goes, but I'm not totally sure what's going to happen with that. And then the next one I have is called The Brides of High Hill by Nevos. This is book 5 in the Singing Hill Cycle novella series. And I'm really excited about this one because in this one we're following the cleric Chi again. And this one is a gothic mystery involving a crumbling estate and a mysterious bride and an extremely murderous teapot, apparently. So it sounds like the cleric Chi is accompanying this young bride to this crumbling estate where she's getting married, and there's something creepy going on with this estate, and there's this aging lord who lives there, and it's really creepy. The lord's young son wanders around like a hanged ghost at night, and it's just very creepy, and I think the cleric Chi has to get to the bottom of the mystery that's going on at this manor. And then the last one I want to tell you about is one that I've never heard anybody talk about, but I saw the cover on Instagram and I was like, I need to read this. It's called A Drop of Venom, and it's a YA fantasy retelling of Medusa. And it has probably my favorite cover I've seen so far for 2024. Stunning. Hello. Let's take a minute to appreciate that. But this is a YA story that's steeped in Indian mythology, and it's an epic fantasy, and it's all about heroes and monsters, and I've heard it's a feminist retelling that explores what it truly means to be a monster, which sounds really, really cool. And we're following this 16-year-old girl who's no stranger to monsters. She's been running from monsters for years in the jungle, and there's this army that's forced her people to like scatter to the ends of the earth, and there's these holy temples that are like kind of float, and they're like mountains, and there's a priestess, and doesn't sound like the priestess is a very good person. And there's monster slayers and prized warriors and things of that nature. I'm kind of going into this one blind too because I kind of just want to see what it's all about, but I'm really interested in the idea of this story of like Medusa and the jungle and all of these monsters, and I'm interested to see how they like take that and also make it feminist and tied in with Indian mythology and stuff like that. I think it has the potential to be really, really cool. So those are all the books that I am really excited about for 2024. Let me know in the comments what 2024 anticipated releases you have, because I would love to know. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon.